What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us. We have a strength coach that has been around winning for a while. He's at Villanova, went to deep in the playoffs, was at a Power Five school in Clemson, was at North Dakota State, so saw a ton of winning football. Guy knows how to win, and he also knows how to program for speed work, right? Sprint timber here, and he's very smart with real estate. So, Mike Tucker, welcome to the show, my man. How's life?
Thanks, Coach. Everything's really good. Appreciate you having me on. I'm a small part in the machines of the places I've been. So happy to be on and talk shop with you all.
We talked. I mean, you're in year six now. For any of our young coaches out there that are like same as you and I, we got here and we're like, oof, didn't think we'd be here as long as we are. How did it happen? Like, what would be your piece of advice to any coach that maybe just got there? We had our transition time for us football strength coaches in January. So if a listeners out there is like, fuck, this is new for me, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd say that, keeping your feet where they are is the most important thing, and you never know what the journey or the path will hold, right? When we were talking earlier, we weren't sure that we would be there for very long, but it ends up being a right spot or a good spot for that point in time, and you just got to live in the moment. So I think people chase logos way too frequently, and they get the allure of, oh, well, if I go here, it'll be a better logo. We've both had opportunities. A lot of other people have had opportunities chasing a big logo or doing, being at a certain school, but maybe they don't learn it all, or they have zero autonomy, and then they get to another school and they haven't programmed for anybody, and they just were a barking commander or somebody that followed orders. So, they don't have any skills built up from their past, whatever it may be. And that's at any school. It doesn't matter if it's a big or small logo. It all depends on the location and, the people in the building.
What about anybody that may be listening and it is their first job or they're getting close to it and they're like, I feel like I have imposter syndrome and I don't have the ability to take over. Did you have any of that, or were you just had confidence naturally?
I think every day you have to step outside your comfort zone and challenge yourself and be unsure about. None of us know, I would say, at least me, I'll speak personally. I don't know 100% of everything that I'm doing is the right transfer, right carryover, right exercise to do at that point in time, right? I think 99% of it, and then there's guesswork. So understanding that, I think everybody has that, but, you have to obviously command a group and run a group properly and make it safe first and foremost, and then logically progressive and increasing intensity, density, overload, all that good stuff. But understanding that, the job still has to get done. So if we're not challenging ourselves to learn more, be better every day, we got a problem.
How have you been able to work within a high performance setting where, if anybody follows you on social, you do a ton with like the mental performance, for lack of a better term. And back when you were doing COVID, you had, I forget her name, but you had the mental performance coach, and you just seem like
Genta.
There it is. And you seem like a really big advocate for it. How can you recommend our listeners do something similar where they're at?
Yeah, I think mental health, everybody, it's at the primary forefront of every single individual you come in contact with, whether it's the jerk football coach you have to deal with, or the AT who's stuck in their ways, or the starting running back, or the walk-on O-lineman, right? Everybody has those quote-unquote issues, whether I think most people, the problem that they face is they do it reactively. Oh, let me go talk to a psychiatrist after their, anxiety hits or after depression hits. Like, we need to be proactive. We need to talk about things. We need to put skill sets in place and the ability to cope and understand and learn and progress and navigate these tricky situations. It's the same thing with, a third and long setting in football. If we don't drill it, if we don't practice it, why would I expect to be successful on game day? So if we don't drill and practice facing with adversity, understanding what coping skills are, learning how to do it, and then being able to adapt in that tougher environment, with that coping skill, it's not going to be successful. So I think that's first and foremost, being proactive with it.
How do you be proactive in a sport, in a world where sometimes there's only one person working for an entire athletic department, and the notion of like, oh hey, Johnny, like you just said, hey, if you're going to be around a dickhead strength coach forever, and then or strength coach or sport coach, and then it's like, oh, go talk to the psychiatrist once a week. Like, does that even really do anything in your opinion? Is it better than nothing, or what are your thoughts? Because I know I have my thoughts on it.
I think talking to a psychiatrist once a week is obviously better than not talking to a psychiatrist once a week. The people in the building, you have more. What I would tell people is I think we all have more of an impact than we realize, right? So my daily interaction, say it's my fourth or fifth hour coaching on the floor, my daily interaction with that fifth group, right? they don't care that I just had 4 groups right before, 4 hours of coaching right before. That's my moment to have that one-on-one interaction, that impact on an emotional, physical, psychological scale with that individual. So I think just having a positive impact on people day in, day out is really important. So that's the sport coaches are around, the athletic trainers are around, the players are around, and it can be tougher at times, obviously, just being in the heat of the moment or, like I mentioned, being at the end of a long day. But, that next group comes in, it's okay, well, that's my moment with that individual.
How were you able to, build those relationships with the athletic trainers and the people in your building? Because, yeah, you've been there for a while and success leaves clues. Like, what had been your strategy to build relationships with people in that building?
I think it fluctuates, just like culture, right? That people are like, oh, the culture's set. No, the culture is very fluid. So understanding that, your actions and your words day in, day out reflect what you're end up going to be an outcome for the culture or for your relationships with those individuals. So if you're have a really good relationship with an individual for 5 years and you're a total jerk, then that takes a little chip that brings you down a rung in the ladder in their mind, right? So I think just being open and honest and, like for speaking with athletic trainer, for instance, we're all on the same team. We're all the same goal. Do we have different ideas and strategies to go about achieving the results? Absolutely. So, first and foremost, setting the foundation of that is our goal in that moment in time. And then understanding, okay, what are your ideas to get there? Here's my ideas and here's why, right? I think strength coaches, sport coaches, and ATs oftentimes will be like, well, this is what I like, or this is how I've done in the past. It's like, okay, but why? Right? Dig deeper. Ask the 5 whys. Continue to dig deeper into the reasoning behind it. Is it research-based? Is it evidence-based? Have you done it with 100 ACLs and you've come back in 8 months instead of 9? Have you done it with 50 grade 1 hamstrings and instead of 7 days you're at 5 days? Like, why are we after it? Is it evidence-based? Is it research-based? So understanding, we're all on the same team, all searching for that same goal, and then just being really open and candid, and then at the end of the day, just not being a douche.
Logistically, for our listeners, how are you going about that with meetings that are weekly? Are you guys using like Slack or emails? Because, again, you make it sound really easy. So if people are just brand new to this concept, how do you recommend they do it?
It is not easy. I'll start off saying that. And honestly, I don't think we have an elite system at Villanova. I don't. Our offices are 20 feet from each other, so that is a good thing, right? My office, the head coach's office, are like 3 doors down, and then the AT I could, is another 50 yards away. So it's a lot of in-passing conversations, a lot of note-taking, a lot of, we hit the warm-up post-practice, and then we bring in our injured guys, whether it's red shirts or yellow shirts, and guys who are completely out or guys who are, slightly modified, and then just all of us having a conversation. Hey, here's the plan. Here's where we're at. How are you feeling today? Right? How was yesterday? We had, you have a grade 1 hamstring. We did some power speed yesterday at 75% intensity, at like 50% range of motion. How do you feel today? Oh, yeah, I'm sore. All right, well, ask the trainer, okay, hey, what do you think? I'm thinking we start to introduce some lateral, some COD, extensively before intensively, and, gauge and see how he feels following that. Ask the kid, hey, how do you feel? You like confident? Like, let's try some stuff. And then it's got to be collaborative, right? I think the days of parameters of, oh, he's not at 9 weeks yet, he can't do this, or he's not at, 13 weeks yet, can't start a push-up progression for a labrum surgery. Like, I just disagree with that entirely, right? Like, there's a reason Adrian Peterson can recover from an ACL faster than everybody. It's not because of a timetable. It's because of him as a human. So understanding that every situation is slightly different. I think we can obviously improve our system at Villanova, like I mentioned, but I think, the open and honesty of our entire group, Tyler Wade, our athletic trainer, Mark Ferrante, head football coach, and we have great kids. So understanding that, those candid conversations, and we're really open and honest with all of our guys.
How do you go about then taking it with your staff? Because you lead, other people that work with you. How do you carry that into working with them, and then how that gets, ultimately on the floor, on the field with the guys?
Yeah, when it comes to like return to play stuff, I think we pretty much put guys in boxes, right? An upper body, a lower body, a soft tissue, an acute or chronic, right? If a guy is, a torn ACL, which we've luckily, knock on wood, not had too many of them, but we will, give those to, maybe a paid intern, and he'll write the program and I'll oversee it, and I'll just say, hey, like, this looks good, adjust this, adjust that. But giving them all autonomy in the program, I think, is important. And then I'll take, the starting middle linebacker who might have a soft tissue thing and we need him back in 4 days for the next game. So we kind of bucket guys based on that and kind of divide and conquer, and you got to have trust in your staff and in the people. So, and if they're not doing a good job, it's not on them, it's on me. So, that at the end of the day is what it comes down to, is like, oh, we didn't meet the mark on this return to play. well, so-and-so oversaw them. Well, coach, that's on me. It doesn't matter. It's on me. I didn't oversee it good enough, or I didn't educate them good enough, or maybe I didn't do enough research, or whatever it may be. So, it all falls on me at the end of the day.
Switching gears, I'm wearing the Sprint Timber shirt. Anybody that's not familiar with it, explain what it is and where it started and where you see it going.
It is a speed-focused month in September. It started during COVID out of complete boredom. I needed something to do. I needed to be stimulated. I'm a workaholic, and I don't say that as a badge of honor. I say that as an actual issue I work on. So I was very bored, and I needed to do something. So tried to start something that influenced and enhanced the field and educated coaches on the power of sprinting to build athletes. And the first thing we get is, oh, well, they must not squat, or like, dude, we have strong guys that are strong. Like, it's just another method, another metric that I think is very underutilized in strength conditioning. And I do think it's gotten better. Maybe it's the blinders being taken off me. Maybe that might be the case. But I do feel like I'm seeing more and more coaches doing more and more speed stuff, more and more transfer stuff on the field, which is good to see for the field. But I think holistically, when was it, 3 years ago now during COVID, you just didn't see it as often. So maybe guys weren't promoting it and guys were doing it, but that's kind of the foundation and the reason behind it. And then all of the proceeds the last couple of years, I've donated the money to Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression, which just helps support mental health in athletes.
Whether you'll admit it or not, I thought you were and are fantastic with programming speed work. Because I feel like a lot of people did start to learn more and more about it during COVID, but that was already stuff that you did learn or you knew. Where did you learn a lot of that stuff, and how are you able to apply it as well as you were?
I think every day I'm asking myself questions on how I can be better, how I can improve. I'm a bookworm for sure. Trying like when the recruits come, I'm like, yo, I'm a nerd. Like at the end of the day, I used to be a meathead. I used to play linebacker. Like I'm a nerd now. Like my job isn't to have be the biggest, baddest dude anymore. It used to be when I played, and my job now is to make you the biggest, baddest dude and be robust and invincible on the field. And that comes from knowledge and trying to understand and learn. So learning from Boo Schexnayder, Charlie Francis, James Smith, Buddy Morris, like these guys were absolute legends in the field, and like they're giving us the answers in these books. Like they're literally spoon feeding us the answers, and people still don't take it, which is crazy. And again, it's just a part of our system. So people will say, oh, yeah, we do speed stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, you give them no rest and you do it once a week. Well, it's like, well, you're not really preparing for 4 days in a row of camp with that being said. So, I have a lot of great mentors in my life and a lot of that, I worked with in the past that demanded excellence from me. So I definitely appreciate that. And then I also have a lot of mentors that don't even know who I am in the form of books. So.
No, that's awesome. And I remember there was a couple Zoom calls that we did together where you had, Ken Clark, with being how close you guys were. How often are you trying to collaborate with people because of the location that you live in?
I'm trying to collaborate with people as much as possible from location. Like Ken's obviously awesome. He's 15, 20 minutes away. He's a good dude. But like at the end of the day, I know I don't have all the answers. So if something pops up and I don't know, I'm not afraid to call somebody in my network and just say, yo, can you help with this? Because I'm struggling or whatever. So I think like some coaches are afraid to feel like they don't have all the answers. Like I'll be the first one to say I don't have it all. So when I have, proximal medial hamstring issue, like, oh, well, I've dealt with distal lateral, like whatever it is, right? Like, hey, this one's really nagging. It's catching on some of our, top end power speed stuff. Like, what have you seen? What drills have you done? Like, there's people who have much more experience than I do that are smarter than me, and I'm thankful that some are willing to share. So, any chance I get in a younger guy or, somebody in my network calls, like I'll always take it.
No, that's awesome of you. Moving into a topic that I know you're very passionate about and I want to learn from you on is the real estate game. So one of the first words I heard you talking about was house hacking. And now I know what it is, but for anybody that has no idea what you're talking about, what is house hacking and why is it important?
Real estate can change your life as a strength and conditioning coach. Every strength and conditioning coach says they are overworked and underpaid. So with those two things being said, real estate's something you can utilize to be where your feet are, to survive financially, and enjoy what you do. Like I go to work every day. I don't work a day in my life. Like I don't. So I get to wear a T-shirt. Like, this is the most dressed up I will be all week. But from a standpoint of real estate, I wish I started earlier. The only time I started was during COVID. Like I mentioned, I was bored out of my mind, and I finally had some time to research and read and develop in other areas, non-strength and conditioning. So with that being said, I started reading and researching everything I could. So for any 21, 22, 23, like, you can start as early as possible. House hacking is buying a house and having roommates that pay the mortgage. So if you are 23 or 24 and you live in the city of Philadelphia, right? Nova's like 25 minutes west. But if you live in the city of Philadelphia because you're intern or GA at Temple, Drexel, Penn, whatever, you can buy a 3 or 4 bedroom house with 3.5% down, which isn't a ton of money, right? And it sounds like a ton of money, but you can. There's first time home buyers programs. There's other programs. You don't have to come out of cash pocket a ton, and then you have, say, a 4 bedroom. 3 of your friends live with you, and charge them $550 a month for rent, and now your mortgage is covered. So you now bought that house with 3.5%, and now you don't have to make a single mortgage payment for the entire year because you're living with your friends. It's a lot harder when you're 28, 29, 30, right? So some coaches I've talked to, like, "Talk, man, that's awesome. Like, I wish I knew about that." And I didn't know about it when I was 22. I wish I did. But for the older coaches, you buy a duplex, a triplex, quadplex, and now your roommates are the other units, so you don't even have to see them. House hacking.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's unbelievable. And so you had plenty of time. What were some of the resources that you were using to educate yourself on?
Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is like the number one, just mindset shift book. But I mean, I have a stack of 20 real estate books, and every Bigger Pockets podcast. My buddies from high school run the Weekly Juice podcast. I think they're at, like, 20 or 30,000 now on Instagram. They post a bunch of good stuff. So any podcast or book I could get my hands on. Bigger Pockets is always really good. Simple Path to Wealth. But they all talk about, similar stuff. And if I had been going back in time to when I was an intern, when I was a GA, I was on the ramen noodles and tuna packet diet with PB&J. So, like, 3.5%, I'm like, dang, like, that was really hard. So starting a side hustle, maybe personal training, and I know it's hard if you're at the gym, 4:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like, go take on that one client at 8 p.m., go make $100 and then stack that. Like, there are ways that you can make it financially affordable for yourself.
What have you been doing real estate wise? Again, obviously you're working, but that was 3 years ago. So what have you learned since then? What are the moves that you've been doing?
So, my case study, I was 28. I bought my first house. It was a row home in Philadelphia, 4 bedroom, 2 bath, modest house in Roxborough, Manayunk. So kind of, not the center city downtown, but right on the, western part of the city. And I moved in to the basement, which was 1 bed, 1 bath, and I just got a girlfriend at the time. And I was like, all right, well, I found these 3 girls to live with, and they're all, like, from Colorado. They're in PA school. They're super nice, super clean. And she's like, I don't know, which, right? It's weird. That's a weird thing. Like, all my friends are getting married. They're having kids. They're in, their forever home. But I put down 5% conventional loan because it was a cheaper rate at the time. But my bank account went to under 10 grand with that one purchase. So it was like, oh shit, like, I'm kind of strapped for cash. But now I charge them $700 for a month for each room, and then it says $2,100. I wasn't paying a single rent payment, so I didn't pay any mortgage for we're all almost on year 2 now. So for 2 years I haven't made a mortgage payment on that house. So after the first year, I moved out. I bought a second house, so with another 5% down conventional loan. And then I flipped an in-law suite, and I don't know the first thing about construction. I hired a contractor, but I demoed everything. And then, so now I'm living in that house right now, and I don't see my roommates. The tenants upstairs pay 90% of the mortgage. So now I'm 3 doors, 2 houses, and I haven't made a single rent payment. Me and my buddy started an LLC, so we got, a couple properties into that, but that's kind of group work together. It's a little different, but that's a very similar situation to how anybody else could be. And it's not having a ton of money on the side. It's saving up for 3.5% down, 5% down, buying it, not paying anything. So now, if you're paying $1,000 in rent, $1,500 in rent, whatever it is, let's say you call it $1,000, that's $12,000 just saved just from rent, right? So now I save that $12,000, and then, if you start a side hustle or anything else, that's another way to start that fund. So that house fund that you want, it's all plausible. And that's not even talking about the tax benefits, the depreciation of the property, so you can write off a lot of stuff. Not that I'm a tax advisor. The property appreciates over time, right? The $100,000 house in 2000 is now $300,000, just the way the world works, right? So you have the loan, and then the loan's getting paid down, right? So say it's a $100,000 house. If I put down $5,000, 5%, $95,000 is in the loan. Well, over time, that goes down as the rents get paid and the mortgage gets paid off, but you're not paying it, the tenants are. So you have loan pay down, tax, the tax losses and the tax write-offs. You have depreciation on the property and appreciation for the value of the property. So that's kind of the four key things when it comes to the benefits of real estate.
So when people hear that, they're like, okay, how the heck did you move out and get a second home for a similar-ish rate, down payment? Like, how would somebody go ahead and do that, like logistically?
Yeah, well, I mean, like anything, you can't be a dummy with your money. You can't go out and pop bottles at the club and do all that stuff. Like, you have to be smart with your money. But realistically, like, I was strapped for cash. Like, I was 100% under 10 grand both times, like zero money left. And then you have that incubation period where you can build it back up. I wouldn't recommend that because it's pretty stressful. And like my girlfriend's like, oh, I want to do this because we're flipping the second unit, right? I'm just trying to flip that. So I'm paying the contractor, I'm doing this, and she's like, I want to do this, and I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, if I don't get this paycheck on Thursday, like, we're not gonna be able to pay the contractor. And so instead of doing the work myself, which is something that people argue about, they'll say, hey, you should do the work yourself or you should pay somebody. I want it done well, I want it done right, and I want it done fast. So I'm not skilled. It's not going to be fast because I have a job, right? And it probably won't be done well because I'm inexperienced. So let me pay somebody to do it, and then I can get somebody in the unit quicker. So all those things that I just talked about kind of allow that process to take place. So you have to be smart with your money, but then remember, after the first year in the first property, if I was paying $1,000, that's 12 grand saved in just rent without even trying. That's 12 grand. If you're paying $1,000, some people pay 2,000. Some people pay 1,500. So without even trying, you can get $1,000 just in the rent saved. So then there's part of your down payment right there, if not the whole thing.
All right, so now you're getting more and more people interested. Like, okay, it sounds doable. What about the difficulty of tenants? And like you just said, you want it done right, smart. Like, do you have a property manager? How do you go about doing that? What do you recommend? What would you tell your old self?
So property manager is going to do two things, right? It's going to eat all your cash flow. So like, say your mortgage is $2 grand and you're renting the whole place out for $3 grand, that $1,000, the property manager is going to take 8 to 10%, right? So it's going to take your cash flow, but it's also going to alleviate all the headaches. Right now, since I'm a small time investor, don't own a lot of units, I'm cool with doing the dirty work, with answering phone calls, with handling problems, with talking about leases. Like, I'm okay with that right now. You stack up and get 10, 20, 30 units, and you have a W-2, that obviously becomes a lot harder. So for people who are just starting out, like, it's not like my tenants call me every day and are asking to come fix the toilet. And if they are, guess what? I'm not a plumber. I'm going to call a plumber and it'll be handled. Like, I don't think it's that big a deal, because some people will say, I don't want to get into real estate because I don't want to go answer a call about a toilet at 2 a.m. You can set any parameter you want in the lease. Like, hey, you call this number and it's business hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Unless it's in a complete emergency, here's my backup. But otherwise, like, don't. So whatever parameters you set, like, they'll adhere to. And being somebody who's rented at places before, I think it's important to, not be a dickhead landlord. Like, in all honesty, right? Like, we've all had good or bad experiences. I think a lot of people have had more so bad experiences with landlords. So it's kind of easier to stand out if you're like a genuine person sometimes in being a landlord, because some people just aren't. So I mean, it's time consuming, yes. But if I'm going to go to work at Villanova for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, like, why not spend an hour or two and develop myself and, secure my future a little bit, after the fact or in the morning before.
All right. What about if, you're doing all of that within that area and you're from the area? Mm-hmm. What if somebody is listening to this like, hey, love the idea, Tuck, but I'm not in my forever place. I'm not living where I'm going to be. Like, I don't want to start doing real estate somewhere that I'm not going to be living forever. based on your knowledge, and again, anybody listening, this isn't fucking financial advice. This isn't real estate. This is just people talking. Do your own research. Just picking his brain. What would you say to somebody that's living, let's just say, I don't know, fucking Arizona, but they're originally from Colorado? Like, is it a pain in the ass based off what you've learned to try to manage stuff or real estate in a different state or whatnot?
So let's look at it this way. If I had known what I know now 10 years ago, I worked in North Dakota State for 3 months. Let's say, a normal GA is 2 years. But if I had bought one a year in Fargo, North Dakota 10 years ago, what are those properties worth 10 years later, right? And say just that $100,000 example, if a couple grand gets paid off a year by the tenants that I didn't have anything to do with, maybe you hire the property manager because you moved to Arizona or you moved to Colorado, all that gets paid down, then you don't even have to worry about it because the property manager is dealing with all of it. So if I were to move or if any issues were to come up where it becomes too stressful, just hire a property manager. Yes, it eats your cash flow. So you say your cash flow per month goes from 500 to 100. Great. Now I'm not profiting nearly as much, but I have zero headaches. The tenants are still paying down the loan. I'm still getting tax write-offs, still getting the property going up in value. Like, there's still so many benefits that it outweighs the headaches, in my opinion. So like, looking back, if I had a property at every school I've been at, like 6 different properties in 10 years, like, I would be fired up. And then if you're strapped for cash, go sell one. Like, just sell one and pay off the others then. Sell the one you bought 10 years ago and use the loan pay down that the tenants paid, and then the property is not worth 100 grand, it's worth 150 grand now. So now that's, let's say guesstimate 75 grand in value. Like, now just go throw that in the next deal.
How do you, all right, 2 questions came from that one. How do you then handle sales and taxes to maximize your ability to then purchase further homes? Like, you didn't sell the house that you first bought, you just bought another house. Let's say you sell one to get something better for you. Again, hypothetically, what does that look like for you, and how would you recommend it for our listeners?
So if you level up, and I haven't done this yet, it's just stuff I've heard on podcast books, talking to real estate lawyers, real estate agents, and other investors. If you sell, just 1031 exchange it. So that's 75 grand in theory. The 1031 exchange is a tax. You don't want to get taxed on that profit, right? You don't want Uncle Sam taking a cut of that pay. So you take that 75K, you level up and say, hey, I want a 300K house instead of 100K. So we sold it for 150. So 75 grand, you can now take that and throw it down as a down payment on the $300,000 house. You just have to, I believe it's 60 or 90 days. It's some parameters. I'm not entirely sure on the timeline, but you have to secure like a couple different options for housing in the next, 30 to 60 days from closing. Then you got to close within 180 days, something like that, to fully, get the tax, Again, not complete advice, just what I've heard on podcasts and other smart people.
Okay. What if people are, looking at interest rates and they're saying, oh, interest rates are high. Does that, somebody who's real estate savvy that's learning about it, do they care? Like, where's that going?
It's something to be aware of. It's not something to be fearful of. So just understanding that's like saying, oh, well, Apple stock's, high right now. Well, 10 years ago it was a tenth of the price, right? Just like the houses 10 years ago were less in value. So as interest rates go up, yes, your payment is more. So understanding that $100,000 house at an 8% interest rate is a lot different payment monthly than a $100,000 house at 4% interest rate. It's just reality, right? So understanding that as long as your numbers are run correctly, like, it's a math equation. It's not, oh, I really like the area, I really like downtown, but there's the margarita bar right next to, like, yes, the location matters. Yes, the appreciation, all that stuff is going to come into play. You buy for cash flow. So if the numbers don't make sense cash flow wise, then don't do it. And that's including property management, maintenance, vacancy, capital expenditure. So if you have those factored into the overall equation, great. It's going to cash flow, awesome. Pull the trigger. If not, you shouldn't do it. I don't care if you like the area. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a math equation. So people get very invested in emotions with the game. Same thing with stocks and to the moon, right? It's a math equation. Do the math.
Within the math equation, how do you handle and what do you recommend to people? What do you tell yourself guideline wise? Cash flow, what do you got to save for the rainy day, for repairs, so that way, let's say you're cash flowing $500 a month, how much percent wise are you earmarking for this, that, and the third?
So when I talk about cash flow, I say that's all after the fact. So
Okay.
that $100,000 house, right? If I put 5% down, it's 95 grand on the loan. Let's say for round numbers, the monthly payments $800. Let's say 700, 750. So if I say that that's going to rent at $1,500 or $1,000, right? That's all good. You have to set aside a certain percentage of the rent for, and you can look at comps in the area, right? I know this neighborhood, 2-bed, 1-bath, rent for X, Y, and Z. Here's 10 different properties that are all rented right now for that rate. So you have to set aside 5% for maintenance. Don't have to. It's a conservative, smart measurement to set that aside for that. 5% maintenance, 5% capital expenditure, so the roof, the water boiler, the heater, all that. Maintenance, capital expenditure, 8 to 10% for maintenance, and then 5% for vacancy. So your tenants move out in May, right? If you can't find somebody till July, that's a month where you're not getting paid, right? So understanding that all those things come into equation. So if it still cash flows after all those numbers are added in, property taxes and insurance, right? 5% down, you're going to have to pay some additional insurance, PMI, primary mortgage insurance, and then check the tax in the area. So like understanding that all these things come into play, and then boom, what is the cash flow after all those expenses are taken out? Because people will say, they'll be like, oh, it's at 750, it'll rent for 900. I'm cash flowing $150. It's like, well, you didn't. What happens when the boiler goes? Because that's all tied in. Like it's still a part of the investment. If the boiler goes and it costs you $5,000, like that's got to come from somewhere. So it's smart to set aside those reserves for that, like you said, rainy day fund. But it all depends on your kind of where you are in your investing journey. People say 8 to 10% is awesome cash on cash return. 10 to 12, is good, and then a home run is like 15% plus. So like, I'll be honest, if I hit 10 singles, I'll be happy, right? I'll still have runners that score. If you hit, because people will be like, oh, I need a home run, it's got to be 15%. It's like, well, you just missed on 2 doubles. And it's like you could have had 3 doors or 4 doors on those doubles. It's just understanding that, it's a math equation, yes, but you got to pull the trigger at some point.
You said a couple of cash on cash return. I've heard some, again, maybe some of our listeners have heard it too. AVR, IR, like what are some of these important metrics when they are doing the numbers and playing that math equation that you talked about?
Yeah, and I might not be the most qualified person to talk about this, right, if we're being honest.
Again, and it's not fucking everybody. It ain't financial advice. I'm picking his brain on a topic he's passionate about. So
I keep it simple, and I plug it all into Excel spreadsheet. So all those things I just mentioned, like they're all, are tied into the purchase price. So say the property's $100,000, and we're still using this one example, and it doesn't cash flow. Okay, delete 100, type in 94 grand. What's the cash flow? Oh, cash flow is $50. Is that worth my time? Probably not, right? Okay, 90 grand or 88 grand. Well, okay, cash flow is $200 a month after everything's said and done, and it's in a appreciating area. All right, like, let's talk. Like, okay, so there's a number that works out there. What is the number, right? And, if you go up to somebody selling a $300,000 house and offer them $150, they're going to be like, fuck you. But, there's a number that works, and you got to have the number that works in your head. So you got to know, is there a buyer's market or seller's market? If, there's 10 offers on a property, you're not getting it for under asking, right? So it's all about, the market and not timing the market, but understanding, what opportunities are there within the market, because there's a number for every property that works for you for cash flow. Some are harder, yes. And then you might have to add value because then if I add value to the $100,000 house, I put 20 grand into it, maybe it's worth 150. And now instead of renting 1,000, 1,200, maybe now it's renting 1,700. So there's a lot of different options out there. General rule of thumb, like 1% rule is like something that's very like talked about in the real estate community. So you buy a $200,000 property, make sure it rents for $2,000. Like that's like a good metric, right? To see if it'll cash flow. So that's understanding the rents in the area, and you don't have to do it where you live or where you grew up, but understanding that some people live in California or New York and can't afford it, so they just do it in Ohio or Kentucky, where property's a little cheaper and they have a manager and stuff that they trust. So it's just something that I think that me as a younger strength coach, I wish I knew about 10 years ago. And I'm listening and learning from all these gurus and all these guys, and then there are people in the space that are 22, 23, and they have 20, 30, 50 units, and it's awesome. So I'm excited for, to hopefully potentially help some strength coaches in the community that, may want to help secure their financial future.
Hey, and that's Kier's episode is out right now, so yours will be released afterwards, and obviously it's a topic that strength coaches, like you said, they talk about. So what would you recommend to any of our listeners is, I guess, what's the baby step? What's like that mini easiest hurdle to barrier to entry? Is it the house hacking idea that you mentioned? Is it Airbnb? Is it wholesaling? Like, what's the best option for somebody to get in the game?
House hacking is definitely the number one strategy for like entrance, because you need somewhere to live. So instead of me putting money into a landlord's pocket, if I have to pay, I'd rather put it into my own pocket, and then get roommates. And especially if you're young, right? It's easy to live with your friends, easy to live with your buddies. When you're older, you might not want to bite the bullet and do that, but you can buy a multi-family, unit, duplex, triplex, quadplex, whatever it may be, and then those tenants pay your mortgage. So there's 1,000 different ways. Very easy, actionable steps to get to that, because that 0 to 1 is a lot harder than 1 to 2. So the 0 to 1 steps is join a real estate group in your area, right? Very easy. Go on Facebook groups and just type in real estate, or meetup.com and type in real estate in your area. There's going to be groups, and people are going to be really smart there, and they're going to present, and you'll learn a lot, right? Buy a couple books, read them, non-strength and conditioning books. Which is hard for some of us to do, to put down the strength conditioning stuff and pick up like something else. And then what I said real estate meetup. I said pick up a book, and then podcast. Right? Everybody's driving to work. Everybody's working out at some point. Like, listen to a podcast. Bigger Pockets, Weekly Juice. Those are probably my two go-tos for real estate.
If anybody was like, hey, these weekly meetups, what are some of the things that you did and that you recommended people to make sure that they're people that are, reputable?
I mean, generally speaking, like you can, I don't know, I feel like you could sniff bullshit sometimes. So understanding that, like the ones I've been to, I'm in 4 different real estate groups, I think, and they're all free or like $5 to go, and you get dinner or whatever. Yeah. But like, it's people. There's real estate agents, there's investors, there's wholesalers, there's people that are 20 that are like, yo, I'm just trying to learn, I'm trying to get my first house hack. There's people who are 40 that are like, yeah, I have 50 units. Like, I'm looking for my next off-market deal here. So it's like a big spectrum of people at the ones I've been to. And some of the meetups are more well-run and better than others, and some have presenters, some are just networking events. And you're just learning and talking to people. Like, it's like going to the strength coach conference. You're learning and talking to people. Like, it's all it is. And everybody wants to win, right? If a wholesaler gets that $100,000 property for 80 grand and he gives it to me for 90 grand, well, I just got a 10 grand discount. He made 10 grand. Like, that's a good relationship for both people. So let's continue to do that. So everybody's trying to learn and get better and elevate, So it's really easy to just go and, be around like-minded people, or people who are trying to elevate themselves.
This is something that you and I have talked about, and maybe our listeners that do already own a house, they've been having this debate. So you educated me on it, and I stopped doing it. Paying off your mortgage early versus investing the difference. Why to do it? Because, again, I did it, but I'm not going to give the advice when I'm talking to the person that gave me the advice. Tell everybody as to why that is better.
So if you have the $1,000 mortgage payment, and better, right? It all depends. Like, the most important thing is your psychology. So if you feel better having a mortgage at $0 or paid off early, awesome, do it, right? On the formula spreadsheet, it does not make a ton of sense, because historically, right, the stock market's return 8 to 10% per year. If your mortgage rate is 2% or 3% or 4%, that's a big spread. So your 100 grand, loan at 3% isn't a ton of interest compared to, say, you want to throw $300 extra at it, right? But what could that $300 do in the stock market? So again, I'm not saying don't pay it off early, because again, if you're going to go spend the $300 on a purse or on supplements, like maybe supplements, but go, or coffee or something, go spend it on that. But if you're going to like just throw it away and not invest it, then pay off your house early. But if you want to potentially have a better use of your money in that moment in time with the 8 to 10% return, cool. A lot of people secured, mortgage rates in the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4%, which is historically super low. Like, everybody, like you mentioned earlier, people are freaking out about the market and the percentage and the interest rate and all that. Like, yeah, but 30 years ago it was at 11% and 15%. So like, historically we're okay. So that's my 2 cents. But, if you want to pay it off, great. Psychologically, it gives you peace of mind, well-being, awesome. If you are looking to maybe, like the example I used, $300 extra, if you're going to spend it on something, don't pay off your house early. If you're going to spend it on, if you want to invest it, I'd recommend paying it off in the stock market. Just my word of advice, especially if your rate's super low.
No, man, I appreciate your time, Tuck. I know you're a busy man, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. If there's anything else that you want to, you're like, hey, I wish I mentioned this, but if not, man, I'll let you go about the rest of your day, and thank you for your time.
No, man, I definitely appreciate you. I love all the content you're putting out. One thing I wish I knew earlier was, life outside of strength and conditioning. There's stuff that you can do. I know, it gets glorified and being in the office super long and great, for the logo and the hours, and that's awesome. And some of my best memories are, the 16, 18-hour days, being on the floor 10, 12 hours. It's fun. But it's not sustainable. One of the things that in the field that you don't see a lot of is married, happy, old strength coaches still in the field. And I don't know and we'll see if that changes. And I think it's a systemic issue. I don't think it's an individual issue. I think a lot of systems are set up for failure, in this field, which is not a great thing. So it's funny, but it's not. I wish there was better support systems out there. And I think being an advocate for that for athletes and coaches alike is important.
No better way to stop it. Thank you very much, brother, for your time. Have a good rest of the day.
All right, man. Have a good one. Thanks.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.